One of the things I try to avoid reading long articles from newspapers in relation to any subject for that matter. But there is one that I am going to read to you today because I don't know many of you have access to the Sydney Morning Herald. But there's an article by Geraldine Brooks, which when I read impacted me greatly because it sums up everything that's happening in the world right at this particular moment, and particularly in relation to the war in Iran. And so I'm going to read this article to you. It's not all that long, but I want you to consider some of the messages that Geraldine presents to us because I think they are extremely noteworthy. So bear with me. This isn't going to be one of those rants where I yell and scream at Sky News or anybody else for that matter. I'm just having a look at this particular article because I think it is exceptional. She says, I covered the Middle East when Sudan was America's friend. The bloodletting hasn't stopped. One day Donald Trump will die, and many evangelical Christians will mourn him. I will think of Alex Pretty and Renee Good, both shot dead by US immigration agents. I will think of Trump's evisceration of US aid, of immigrant families torn apart, and of 160 little girls who went to school in Iran this week and never came home. And I will think Trump's mourners are very misguided to pray for such a dreadful president. But that will be in their megachurches and Bible study groups, and it will be their business. One day Benjamin Netanyahu will die, and some Jewish people will say Kaddish for him, and I will think of the dead children of Kibbutz Be'er who he didn't protect on October the 7th, 2023, and the thousands of Gazan children he bombed. And I will think they are very misguided to waste prayers on such a leader. But that will be in their synagogues and shoals, and it would be their business. This week, Al-Khamenei died, and a handful of Australian Shiites mourned him. I think of the terrorism he has sponsored and the citizens he has shot, tortured, oppressed, and impoverished. And I think they are very misguided. But that was in their Husseinas and Masjaz, and that is their business. If anyone wondered if our free speech rights have lately become imperiled, the rush of politicians seeking to prosecute people over which dead leader they may pray for offers a depressing answer. Not even a year after Australians went to the polls and roundly rejected the politics of division, all sides seem in a mighty rush to take sides. The Prime Minister calls for social cohesion and then invites a surprisingly controversial head of state, Israel's Isaac Herzog, to Australia. The New South Wales Premier puts draconian restrictions on protests against that visit, then appears ready to excuse police roughing up Muslim men at prayer. Pauline Hanson makes unspeakable racist statements about Muslims, and the coalition declines to support a censure motion against her. And all major parties rush to the side of the United States in a war of choice, one completely absent legal sanction, either domestic from the US Congress or international from the United Nations. This proclivity of ours for jumping into every foxhole America chooses to dig has made poor sense of Australia even in the years when the US was a robust democracy, a reliable ally, and adherent to international law. It makes for less sense now when none of those things are currently true. How little we have learned. In September 1987, I left Sydney to take up the role of Middle East correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, and the first major story I covered was the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Almost 40 years later, here we are again. Here we are still. Multiple wars, hundreds of thousands of dead. And I cannot point to a single thing in the region that is better than it was in 1987. No strategic stability, no flourishing new democracy, no improvement in human rights. The US supported Saddam Hussein in those days. The US ambassador looked me in the eye across her desk in Baghdad and told me Saddam is a guy who we can work with. He had invaded Iran and was in the middle of a charnel house of a war that lasted 8 years and killed over 500,000 people. During that war, Israel and the US provided Iraq with targeting information for missiles that flattened Iranian cities such as Khorramshahr. I walked through debris of that ghost town and through residential neighbourhoods in Tehran where those missiles had reduced homes to rubble. Iran had no missile program of its own in those days and no way to answer the attacks. Ayatollah Khomeini, founder of the Islamic Republic of Iran, was forced to seek a ceasefire and emboldened Saddam went on to invade Kuwait, and that guy we can work with wound up at the end of a very expensive life's treasure, American noose. No one wanted a nuclear-armed Iran. After tough, skilled diplomacy by the Obama administration and European allies, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action appeared to be working. The only party dissatisfied with the nuclear deal was Netanyahu, who interfered in US domestic politics to undermine it and to work with Trump's re-election. Trump boasted that he obliterated Iran's nuclear program after the 12-day war last year. Faced with plummeting domestic popularity and rising clamour over what his administration is hiding in the Epstein files, he moved the goalpost to justify this new onslaught. He declared that Iran must give up its missiles program, the very missile program that America's tragically misguided Iraq policy provoked. Iran is an ancient culture with a vibrant young population, 2/3 of whom were born since the Iranian Revolution. Many of them could have left to seek more freedom and prosperity. Instead, they have stayed to fight for the heart and the soul of their culture. They risk their lives in the streets, but also in the creation of art and music, literature and film surpassing humanistic beauty. They deserve better than the Ayatollahs, and they deserve better than their legal war waged by a felonious, feckless president with no plan for what follows. Rise up, he says. The last time I heard a US president say those words, Iraqi Shiites and Kurds listened. They rose in the south and the north of Iraq and were slaughtered in their thousands, while George H.W. Bush played golf. I think that is a really apt summary of where the world is at this particular moment. Nothing has changed, as she said, in 47 years. We are still hostile towards each other. We still are divisive. We still trade in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. There are few lessons that we have learnt from history. We know that aerial attacks have never worked. We know that the wars that America has involved themselves in, from Vietnam to Afghanistan, have never resulted in peace. Yet here we are again. I think this is a significant piece written by Geraldine Brooks, and it's something we all should take note of. If you like my posts, please subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications. I hope to be able to bring to you my version of the way the world is and how perhaps we can even find ways to rectify it.